Okay, hi. Hi, Alison. First of all, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. So this collateral growth podcast talk about everything, tech careers, interview people that are in the tech space, get to, know more about them, their career path and how they can help teach others that want to come into this path or transitioning into this path. So thank you so much for coming on this episode.
Thank you for having me.
Um, yeah. Okay. So can you just introduce yourself? What you do? What you do for a living? Who are you? Who's
So,
Alison?
Alison, that's a good question. Who's Alison? Alison is a product designer, a Nigerian product designer who currently works as senior product designer for payments and money points. Alison has been designing for about 5 years, and um, on the side, when she's not designing finance, she co-owns a, I would say, community-driven design system called Rena UI. Um, Alison likes math. Alison is a very introverted person who has been forced to the internet because of her career choice. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it.
Okay. I'm actually shocked you're introverted. I never. I always thought you were, like out there.
No,
Interesting.
no,
I was
not
out
at all. Extremely
there.
introverted.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So when did you realize that you wanted to be a product designer?
I don't think I realized till a few years into my career. So when I started product design, the intention was not to do it as a full career path. I actually started product design during the period that there was ASU strike. So I was an undergraduate, there was ASU strike, I
Oh,
was bored. So I found myself in the tech space. I was learning how to code at the time. And then before this time, I had attempted to learn graphic design before I got into university, but circumstances were not very favorable. So that's a long story, but that didn't happen. So I kind of had an idea of design to an extent. So somehow, while I was learning how to code, somebody mentioned that since I have graphic design experience, it feels like I would do great as a product designer and I should explore it. 5 years later, here we are. I don't think I really realized I wanted to do it until I got in. I'm like, oh, I really like this thing, so I'll just keep doing it.
okay. I mean, that's cool. It just okay. Okay, I feel you. I feel you. I mean, for someone like me, it was my boss that was like, you're good at this thing, right? And that was pretty much it. I was already doing it, and then my boss just told me, you're good at it, and that was pretty much how I knew. Okay, I guess this is what I'm doing. Okay, so did you ever consider like a completely different career, um, before product?
Yeah, I've considered several, a number of career paths. Let me tell you, my first degree is in biochemistry. And when I got
Oh,
into university, the plan was that after my first degree, I would go take my BSc and go to medical school. That was the initial plan. As you can see, that did not or has not happened. And
clearly,
then
yeah.
my third year doing my IT, I got to explore the industrial parts of my course in Shell, Sniper, where I did my undergraduate internship. And I honestly, I realized I actually like chemistry when I started working there. Like, I really like chemistry. I'm actually a very analytical person. And I'm like, and everybody there was just advising, okay, once you're done with your BSc in the next 1 year, you should take a course or a program or a degree in chemical engineering or process engineering, which is kind of chemistry but related to the oil and gas field. So that was another
Mm-hmm.
plan. As we can see, that has not happened yet. Several other things have come up in the few years that I have even been designing. So I have considered a lot of career paths. Many I have not explored yet because I just I don't think it's time, or I just haven't given it much thought. Others because it's just a thing that I like the idea of, not necessarily like the job or the industry itself. But I really like design and I'm here, so let's see how long I do it for.
Okay. I mean, so I'm guessing you're that kind of person that doesn't believe in like one career path for the rest of your life. If you're in a
Yeah,
different phase and you find that you're into something else, you're going to move into that thing as well.
exactly. And I think I get that from my dad because he is just like me. My dad has been alive for over 60 years, and almost every week, he's talking about one thing that he likes to do, and he goes to do it. And I'm like, I hope that when I'm this age, I'm also as I don't give up on myself. I still like feel like I can do anything I want to do. My dad is the source behind that. Like, you can do whatever you want. I can wake up and everything and say I want to be a doctor, and I will be a doctor. So I think it's just a case of whatever it is you find yourself doing in life at a particular point, doing well, or don't be scared to switch if you feel like you're you can do better in something else, or you feel more of yourself in another field. Like, you only have one life. Switch it up as many times as you need to. You can always switch it up.
True. I think I also learned that from Shilron Shui. Whenever
Oh,
I first time I met her, I asked her like, what does she really do? And then she's like, she doesn't define herself by one thing because she has done so many things. So and she doesn't define like, oh, this is who I am, I'm a business person, product person. She's a leader in the tech space. That's what she would just say. And I think
mhm,
that's really important because it kind of allows you to explore and like your mind is just open
exactly.
to opportunities as opposed to yeah, very linear to one thing that you just want to do.
Yeah.
Cool, cool, cool. So, when you started your journey as a designer, who was that, or was there something that inspired you, or a person that inspired you at the start? You're like, okay, I want to be like this person or attain what this person has attained. I like to. I don't like to really say be like a person because at the end of the day, we're all individuals. But there's someone
Yeah.
that you saw that like, okay, the person kind of inspired you to want to be great at your design.
When I started design, not really. I mean, there were people who inspired me, but they were not in the tech space. So my journey in the tech space was not because I saw a person who I wanted to be like. But I
Mhm.
think generally, as an ambitious person, I was driven. My ambition is driven. I mean, by me, but like is inspired by a couple of other ambitious men in different fields. So every field that I have happened to work in, or men I've read about, I've seen women who have kind of defied the odds and been really great at what they do. And I'm like, I can do this thing. So even though we're not in the same field, I feel like the principles are the same when it comes to doing like really excellent work and like making a name for yourself in your field. So in the beginning of my career, yes, no, I didn't have any. I mean, maybe there were people who were inspiring, but they were not top of mind. So it was when I got into the field that I realized that there are actually people who, I like what they do, and I feel like it's something that I would like to emulate at some point in my life.
Okay. Okay. Was there any point in your career when you were like, I don't think I know what I'm doing right now. Like you felt like, what am I doing? Is this what I want to do? And maybe you panicked or you felt like you needed to go back to the drawing board to be sure this is what you wanted to do for yourself.
Yes, it happens every week. It happens every week where I rethink my life every week. And I feel like the higher I go in my career, the more often it happens. Imposter syndrome happens to me every damn time. And so your question is, does it happen? Yes, it does. It has happened multiple times. I think the next question, follow-up question would be, what do I then do about it? I think now I've realized that I can't control it. It will happen. And it usually happens when something big happens in my life. Like I get like a new responsibility at work, or I got this very amazing email from somebody in an organization that they're just talking about how they value my work or how they want me to come do something for them. And I'm like, thank you, but I don't know if I'm that big. Like, I don't know if I can do this thing. So I realize, I rethink my entire life so much. And then I go to my friends to rant, of course, because that's why they are there. That's their one job description, to make
Exactly.
me
That's
believe
why they are here.
that I'm
Mhm.
overthinking my life. And of course, they always send me receipt about when, like, first, if you are in a room, you're not in that room by chance because you deserve to be there. So yes, overthink your life, but never doubt how much work you've done to get to the point that you are now.
Okay.
Second thing is, of course, the whole banter is there. Like a very foolish person. Why do you think you're not good enough? All those, friendship are down. At the end of the day, I realized that that doubt will always be there. but I'm not going to now neglect all the work I've done because I'm afraid. And I've
Mm-hmm.
told myself, like that told me something like, if you're not scared to do something, then it's not big enough. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I am terrified. I'm worried that I will flop this opportunity or I will disappoint these people. But
But you do it
I'm going
anyways.
to make it like a point to do it so well that I don't support myself, because at the end of the day, if I flop, then I've proven that voice in my head right. Like I told you, we're not good enough and all of that. So yeah, it happens a lot, but I think I'm getting over, silencing that voice.
I feel you. I totally feel you. So, how would you describe your way of designing in 3 words? How do you approach design, like from your own personal aspects?
Hmm. There's no one correct answer. I know you said three, but there's no one correct answer to how it is, because there are also like other factors involved, aka clients or your bosses. But I think if it was left to me, the first thing would be users at forefront of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Second
Most
thing would
important.
be most important. Second thing would be business, and third thing would be engineering. I don't know if this answers the question you're asking me now, because now I know your question was what. Can you ask me again? I feel like my answers were not the answers to the
Okay,
question you
so
asked
when it
me.
comes to your style, your approach in designing, what are the 3 top things that you prioritize when you want to start a design?
Yeah. So that's the answer actually. Users, business, and engineering. The first thing is that users are front and center of everything that I do. I like to think that. So if it's not user friendly, if it's unethical in a UX level, it's not gonna fly. Second thing to consider is then at the end of the day, the reason why we are all here is the bottom line, which is money. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
you have passion for design, great. But if that business you're designing for is not making money, you will not be able to earn and
You're
you
not
won't be able to feed
employed.
yourself and your passion will die.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we are all passionate, but the bottom line for all of the startups that we build, all the businesses we build, even the freelancing, it's all revenue driven. So the business has to be able to benefit from that decision you're making. That design you're doing or the approach you're taking, is it going to be detrimental to business now or in the future? Is something that is unethical on a business level? Is something that can get the business in trouble? Is something that will make the business, lose money or spend more? All of these things are considered. Of course, you then have to consider. The third thing now is engineering, and this is very important because many designers feel like engineers are their enemies. That's not even the truth. I feel like engineers are actually like a designer's best friend, because
Mhm.
at the end of the day, somebody has to build it. So how feasible is this thing? I know that code has so many like um it has so much possibility, but the people, the skills that we are working with is also very important to consider. Do you have engineers who can carry this dream from the visualization that you are at to the point where it is built and people can actually use it? It's very important. Is it something that engineering can do now or in the future? Is it something that engineering can do at all? Is it something that will require maybe some integration that we don't have access to? Is it something that will require a partnership that you can't get at this time? So, as a designer, try to think about every other person on the team who has to make that dream come alive, because the dream does not end on Figma. Somebody has to build it. So yeah, those three things are like I think very important for everybody actually who's building stuff.
Okay. So, what's the current design trend in the design world that you are liking or you are falling in love with right now?
Design trend. Design trend that I'm falling in love with. I don't know. I don't know. There's this thing that
Maybe I
came.
can give an example. Like,
Yes.
okay, like sometimes it gets to some point where you see some, maybe for example, some fintechs start leaning towards using just black and white as their
Ooh,
color. It
yeah.
was kind of like a phase one time, and then
Yeah.
sometimes then I start come back into using colors again. So that's
Mhm.
an example of a trend. I mean, I'm not a designer. I have
Yeah.
designer friends, but I don't think
I get you.
but
I get
in
you.
your
I
current
think
design world.
mine. I think mine would not be a visual trend. It would be a customer experience trend. And I've seen
Mm-hmm.
like competition is so earlier in the finance space. It was once you had a product that people can send money from, it was good enough. Once people can send money and receive money and buy airtime, you were big enough. But there's so much competition, especially in Nigerian tech space right now, that you have to do a little more. And people are now thinking about, because companies are thinking about, are really prioritizing design because of the user experience that they need to stand out. I'll
Mm-hmm.
give you an example.
Very new to us.
I hope I don't get in trouble for this, but Paystack launched Zap, and people started saying on Twitter saying, "Oh, this is what OPay has
Okay,
done."
okay.
Somebody said OPay is for the trenches. OPay is Raz. So another person said, "If you use OPay, I don't rate you." And I'm just like, I work for an OPay competitor, but OPay, I cannot really deny that they have done amazing work when it comes to customer experience. Yes, they might not have the best visuals, but they solve the problem. One of the problems we have
Exactly.
in Nigerian finance is that there's always downtime, and many companies don't design for downtime. You'll be hearing there's always, like every week, GT Bank network is always down every week, and people are sending money to GT Bank. And if you send money to GT Bank when it's down, your money is, frozen at least till it's back up again. Or so it's just a lot of chaos with money and sending money in Nigeria. And Open designed a feature where you can see when the recipient bank you are sending to is down. So you can then decide, do I want to send this money or not? That was a very big problem. Like and
Mm-hmm.
here's the funny thing. We keep saying we are banking the unbanked, we are banking the unbanked. The unbanked don't care about your flying prototypes. They don't care about your flashy colors, about how your button gradient is going blue, black, blue, black. They want the thing to work
Exactly.
as long as it solve their problem for them. So my mom would definitely prioritize OPay. Hey, I'm sorry, my employees are going to see this video. But like for somebody like parents, for example, they don't really care about visuals. They're not very visual centered. They want a solution that works. And nobody else, at least at the time of making this video, has implemented that. So if a woman in the market is saying, don't use that bank or use this bank because if you want to send money and the network is bad, they will tell you. Of course, that the users are now the ones doing marketing for them. The Zap launch that launched now has it caused good PR, good free PR for OP. And I'm just like, I feel
Exactly.
like other fintechs will learn from this because now all of the preachings of UX, 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 now you're putting UX front and center. Of course, also ties into the thing I said about engineering. It was not enough that the designers or the product people made that feature, thought about it. They also had to make it work. So I'm sure they considered the users, which is great for users, business, great for business, engineering could have made it work. And then it happened. So I think the trend, in summary, the trend for me is that companies are now understanding exactly why design is important. So that's a win for designers.
Wow. I mean, you raised a very good point there with the OP because at the end of the day, your users will speak for you on they
Yeah.
like, if
Best
they like, if they're having a good experience with
they will
your
sell your
product.
market claim.
They
The
will speak
best
for
type of
you. They will
marketing
speak
is
for
word
you.
of mouth.
What drives me, you're making, there's no point you're making because there's something I'm trying to work on. Yeah. I'm trying
Okay.
to do like a thing around user empathy in fintech.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like this OPE thing kind of like is adding to the point
Mm-hmm.
because if a user feels good about your product and they feel like they feel seen,
Mm-hmm.
they'll most likely want to keep using you and be referencing you over and over again, as opposed to when they're using you and you're giving them. And also when they use you and give them constant headache, they're also going to refer you as that
Yeah,
platform that always stresses them out.
exactly.
Okay, every time I think about it, I feel like I'm actually just going to do it. I've been stalling, but I think I'm just going to do it now. I'm not going
You
to
should.
hold back
You
anymore.
actually should. You should do
Yeah,
it.
I've gotten all the validation I need. Okay. So whenever you feel stuck, how do you, like, especially when you're designing and you just feel like you don't know what you're doing right now, how do you solve that? How do you fix that?
I think the first thing is to leave your laptop because half the time we are just burnt out and stressed, and it happens a lot. Especially when you're creative. As much as we are creative, we are not God. You are a human being. Sometimes your brain is tired. Put your laptop and go and sleep, or eat food and watch a movie. But that jokes apart, I feel like the first thing that I do especially is to leave the scene, like leave that whole workspace, like just exit the place. Of course, this will not work if I have deadlines. If I have a meeting in 2 hours, I can't leave my workspace because I'm on
Exactly.
time. But if I have time on my side, which is usually like the preferred scenario so that I can do my best, is to leave that whole space and just give my brain a break. Maybe cook, maybe take a walk, maybe go to the gym. Just clear your head off the problem for a while. And then another thing I think many designers don't realize or take for granted is ideating on paper. Like there's been so many tools that have come up now that we have kind of forgotten how we started. Every design that started on paper. You work from on paper, but now there's Figma, there's FigJam. You're now your paper is not important anymore. I think we need to
Some are even using their
for me,
iPads now. That's
for me, you get a sticky note, you get a notepad, and you sketch out the problem. So there's a technique called crazy eights, which is basically where you try to find 8 solutions to a problem. And this helps me a lot. I feel like
hmm
so the way it works is I don't know, I time myself, so I give myself 1 minute per problem. So it's 8 minutes for 8 solutions. And then by the time from the first one, you're probably still stuck. You can't, you're not really getting the solution. But by the time you start sketching one, by the time you get to the second one, you have a bit more your brain is basically decluttering itself.
Yeah.
By the time you get to the eighth one, you have as much clarity as you need. And you realize that you actually have found the solution that you didn't think you could see because now you've been able to kind of just train your brain through that, ignoring all the other distractions that come with looking at your screen. As much as we like to deny that, it actually is true. Looking at your screen sometimes is the problem. So leave your screen, look at paper. If it's a solution that other people have solved, I would also recommend competitive analysis. So look at again, when you're looking for inspiration, I don't recommend looking at inspiration from competition. Yes, do audits for your competitor, see how they've solved the problem, but don't use them as inspiration. Because you work in finance does not mean you should go and be looking at Revolut for inspiration. Your inspiration might be in Uber for your finance. We get inspiration from the wildest places. I got inspiration for a recipe app from from a train. Don't ask me. I don't even know how it happened. I was looking at something else on the train and I realized that, oh my God, I could do this for the app I'm working on. So do not limit yourself to other products in the same industry you are designing for. Look at how other industries are designed. I promise you probably find 1 or 2 things from there that you can also apply here. And of course, that's when you now like reinvent the wheel, if that's a good word to use. But yeah, I think that answers the question you asked me.
Yeah, it just but I feel one thing you just said that hit now is not getting inspiration from competitors. I don't think okay. I think in my own because sometimes I when I'm trying to help my designer, I'm always looking at Mobins and I'm always sticking to because of like I work in fintech. I'm always sticking to the finance ones. And the thing is, I keep telling myself that what I'm looking for is not here, but I
Yeah.
also don't know where to get what I'm looking for. And I'm just like it feels in my chest, it feels somehow if I'm going to a non fintech
Hmm.
product to look for inspiration. But now that you've said it, it makes total sense because one thing I don't like is opening two different apps and seeing exactly the same flow.
Similar things, exactly.
There's no creativity here. You just copy and paste it and use your brand color, right?
Hmm?
So now it now makes total sense if you really want to design like proper without feeling like okay my computer is doing A then I want to do A as well, then you mean you actually have to step out of looking at those competitors. Thank you.
Yeah. I'll give you another example.
Thank you.
Moonshots by Tech Cabal conference, yeah?
Mhm.
The Tech Cabal team, one of them is CAB, her name is Ada. And
Mm-hmm.
when she was showing us on Twitter the inspiration behind those designs, I was in awe. I wish I'll find it, I'll send it to you on Instagram. Now, was a building. You know how architecture is. There was a building and it had a certain symmetry. It had a certain way it was like designed, like lines and everything. And she just picked that building and made a vector in representation of it and used it for the banners. I could have, even if I had gone to that building myself, I wouldn't think that she drew the inspiration for the designs for a moonshot from there. But when she put them side by side, I could see what she's
That's
talking about.
interesting.
But I wouldn't think to do that. And then I'm like, okay, this is how you be a creative, because I know that we all draw like there's nothing that is new. Every design has been done before, but you can draw inspiration from a design that's somewhere else and put it in your field, and it looks like it's like original. So yeah, I think we should stop looking at
Mm-hmm.
each other's designs. We should look outside. There's inspiration outside.
Thank you. That makes so much sense now. I think I should prioritize. I should also look into all of that. Okay, so what is the most rewarding part of being a product designer?
I want to say the money, but I'm trying to not be not be that person. Okay, for me, I think it is the aftermath. Design is hard, especially when you are working with a very user-centered team. Some things you cannot escape. You have to do everything. You can't cut the corners. You have to do. In fact, you have to do everything. In fact, the higher the company grows, the more work actually you have to do. But I think so. I don't. I mean, I like the process, but it's not my best part. But seeing all of those, meetings and work hours of brainstorming yield results with people actually using the product is the best part for me. That's the most rewarding part. Seeing that something that you designed has gone live, people are actually saying good or bad things. Actually, it doesn't all have it can't. I don't think it's ever going to be all good. Somebody always has something negative to say about your work, but just seeing that people are actually using this thing, like building products that people always want to use, is one thing that I find the most rewarding about it. And it's also what I look out for when I'm, applying to a job or trying to get a client. I need this thing to go live. I need people to use it. Is the engineering team capable of building what I would design? Is the
Mhm.
company, are they serious about, or are they trying to raise funds? Are they serious about launching and building a company? Should I be here, kind of thing? But yeah, I think the aftermath is usually the best part, because then you've forgotten all your. It's like when a woman had a baby, you've forgotten all the months of morning sickness and cramps, and your baby,
Yeah.
you're happy. That's exactly what it feels like. I don't know. I haven't had a child, but I feel like that's what it feels like. I think that's what it feels like.
I mean, from the way they've described it, I guess. From the way it's been described, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. It feels really good when you see that people are actually using, what you've built. It feels really good. It feels really good. Okay, so what's one thing that you know now that you are doing now,
Mm-hmm.
or now that you wish you knew sooner than now?
That question is tricky, because first I said in my head is not the answer to that question. But I think it would just be that it is hard. Actually, no, I don't think I don't. Hmm. What is your question? And I would say what is my mind because I've seen it. I'm going to answer your question
Okay.
first.
Okay.
One thing I wish I knew earlier that I know now, I think it would just be. That's a good one. What is it that I wish I? I think we'll be doing good work, like how important doing good work is. I made a couple of mistakes when I started my career. I was extremely unprofessional. Mistakes I wish I could take back, but we are past that. So all I can do is be better. But earlier in my career, I made a lot of mistakes that they didn't. Luckily for me, they didn't have very severe repercussions. I think God was just merciful.
Mm.
But if I make those mistakes now, I will hear it. Like I will be dragged to the end of the earth. But I think it's just how important doing good work actually is for yourself, for your brand image, for other people, of course, and the benefits that you get for doing good work. I think it would just be I would do better if I was starting out again. But what I wanted to say was something I had in church is that if we human beings know how hard the process will be to get to the destination we want to get to, we wouldn't start. So what I wanted to say was I wish I knew how hard it would be, but Actually, I don't think I wanted to know. If I knew, I wouldn't start.
Yeah,
And
probably just
yeah, I would
yeah.
have took her, I'm not doing it. Yeah. But now that I'm here, I'm like, oh, it was hard to get here, but I'm here. But if I knew what the process would be like, I wouldn't get here. So second advice I would give myself would be to just
Mhm.
start where you are. Like, don't wait for the perfect opportunity to do anything. Just start. People are always watching you. People are just start. Like all of the hard work you put, however small, like showing up every day, the end result will be cumulative. Like it's building up to the next big thing in your life. So don't wait for, oh, I don't have a camera, or I don't have clothes, or I don't have a setup or whatever. Just start with what you have, and then build up from there.
Which now brings me to my next question, which is kind of similar, but it's not in reference to you. It's what is a skill you think designers should have that do you think currently they are lacking?
I think it would be, it's not a skill, it's more of, it's a skill, maybe it's a skill. But what I wanted to say was, I think it would be to understand how their work affects the bottom line. Figma is a tool. Figma is not design. I think Figma is, as much as it's a great tool, it is just a part of the process. It's not even the process at all. First problem I found when I was working, I worked with agencies, I worked with startups. I realized that the reason why many companies don't value design is that, no, wait, how do I say that? No, that's not what I say. Many companies don't value design. That's what I noticed, is that they're always, designers to them are just like visual people. Paint this blue. I don't like the color. My wife doesn't like the way your button looks. Some very random feedback. And it's because they don't have design. And while that's not their fault, I feel like if the designers on the team could explain, which is not a solution, but it's to like show, just basically show the business impact that design has, like outside of the visual part of it, that would help. So now that I know better, luckily my company is, they understand, I think they understand that. But many designers and many companies still don't understand how design ties to the bottom line, which is their revenue. Founders don't care about Figma. If you had to design on your wall for their product to go live, they wouldn't care if you put the platform on your mirror, they wouldn't actually care. Their own is that they want that product to go live so they can get users or get funding or whatever. The bottom line of every business is money. So your tool is not really their business. They don't really care about that. So if you need time to, let's say, build a design system or do a prototype, or you have certain very you have strong opinions on how something should be, you should be able to tie it to what they understand. You can't be telling them this is not smooth. What does that have to do with anything? The prototype is not, the animation is not doing. They don't care about that. Tell me how your 1 week for design system will help me, which is, oh, it will help the developers build faster, which means that we go to market faster. Or it just means that the developers will not struggle to do these things. So instead of hiring more developers, you can hire like less of them. So you save money as a business and then you go to market faster. Like tie it to the in language that I can understand. But if the designers don't know what it is, they can't explain it or show it to the people who have employed them. So that's when you see things like center design happening, because the designers themselves have not been able to, maybe they know, but not been able to probably articulate these thoughts or this response when they are doing reviews or even feedbacks to employers. So I think every designer should understand how their work ties into it. Also, it will help you probably measure design impact of your work, like as a designer. Like if you are applying to a job, or you are just talking to a recruiter, or maybe applying for something, and they're asking you, your experience or what have you done at the previous company. People are very driven by numbers, so you can easily say, oh, we launched this and we improved, we tracked data and we improved. Maybe user onboarding used to be 10 seconds before on average, now it's like 5 seconds because we cut it down to like 3 screens instead. And we integrated, signing up with Google, so we shortened time. Like, just people need to see that you understand like the business part, and it's not just oh Figma or your gradient is doing blue to purple. Those things look good, but nobody really cares if it's not making money at the end of the day. So yeah,
Exactly.
I think that would be
Exactly.
that would be what I would hope everybody gets to know. It took me a while. I still am learning exactly like because it's not just one aspect. There are a lot of things that I still don't know. But I think people designers should prioritize this knowledge. It's very important.
Okay. It makes so much sense. Also brings back the whole OP conversation all over again. Like you mentioned, the UI is not extremely great. The experience is amazing, and it's making business money, solving
Exactly.
the problem, and that's the most important thing. But at the same time, I personally, I like a
Hmm.
good UI. I
Me
like a very
too.
good
Me too.
UI. So, do you think designers are underrated in the tech space in general? In tech space, do you think designers are underrated?
I think this ties to my previous answer. I don't think, hey, God. In the tech space, I think they are. I think they are.
I think they're underrated. Hmm. I mean, I think they are too, though.
Yeah, but I
But
don't know
then,
why. I don't know why. I feel like the effective space in Nigeria is very engineering centered because the engineers make the thing actually work. But they forget
hmm,
that we are the ones responsible for how it looks and how it actually works technically. So while the engineering team builds out the functionality, designers actually think about the functionality, think about how it should work before the engineers build it. But I think again, it has into people don't understand the value of design, so they've limited design to just a visual role. Oh, I want it to look good. Come and
yeah,
do my logo for me. Do a component library, a design system, and that's about it. Come and design this dashboard. So because the grand responsibility of designer, especially product designers, is not very clear to both founders and designers themselves, there's a tendency for them to feel like our role is smaller than it actually is. So yes, I think it is we are underrated. I mean designers are underrated, but I don't know what we can do about it. But yeah, I think we
true.
could do with a lot more PR, especially in Nigerian tech space.
Okay, so how do you handle feedback with your work? Say you share your work with the wider team, your boss gives you feedback, and sometimes it's not very pleasant, right? He's, probably upset with what you've done, or maybe you didn't communicate it well, or whatnot. How do you handle feedback?
So I think one skill that designers need to learn is the skill of listening, not just to users but stakeholders as well. Primarily because sometimes as designers, we are so deep into the process that your brain forms like a boundary. So you're only looking within the scope of a solution you designed. You feel like what you designed is the best thing. More often than not, it's not really what we think because we are just like, in that small box of the solutions we have designed. And if anybody sees anything like outside, they are fighting us. Not necessarily. I think you should keep like an open mind and actually listen. If you do that, you'll be able to think better because at the end of the day, the end goal is that the product is has the best solution that you can build at that time. So first is to calm down, but it's fighting you. Maybe they're fighting you, but don't take it like that. And actually listen. And sometimes the person involved is probably being more aggressive than they should be about that feedback. But
Mm,
this is where soft skills come in. So your response should not be to shout back because the person is upset or maybe might be insulting in some cases, but you should keep your cool as much as possible. Especially if your video is on in that call. Just act like you're not aware that you're fighting you. Just calm down and think about that product, the users, your design, and the engineering team. With that mindset, you are not being defensive, you're actually being, reasonable. What you will be surprised to see is that the person might end up calming down because they've seen that your reaction is not to defend yourself or, it's not like a defense position. So calm down first and think about what the person is saying. While they are while they might not be taking the best approach, they might actually have some ideas that you should have considered. They might be saying the right thing but in the wrong way. So ignore the method of delivery, take the message and digest it. Apologize if you need to. Tell them you come back to them with a solution based on feedback. If it's something you need to counter it with evidence. You don't they don't do like that. Show cases.
Mm,
Oh, this thing you are saying was done by this company at this time. Which is better to go to these meetings armed because questions will come. You need to
yeah.
have answers for them. So, oh, this thing you're saying, Paystack did it last year, and if you look at numbers they had, like if you notice from even their feedback of users on Twitter, they're complaining about these things. So I don't think it's a good approach to take. The person might still say, "Oh, I insist," but you have made your thoughts clear ahead of time with evidence. So if anything happens, mm, I don't know, but
True.
just exactly, just making sure that you actually counter the whatever it is. If you feel like you don't really agree with it, if you counter it, you should just have a solution. So the thing I don't like is where people say, "Oh, this thing won't work."
And that's
Engineers,
all. No solution.
oh, I designed something. You're like, "Oh, Alison, it won't work." Okay, so what do I do now? I should start it. What should I now do with this thing you just said now? So you say, "Oh, I appreciate your thoughts. I feel like it won't work because of this reason. But here's what I think is an alternate solution, thinking in line you're thinking in, and maybe even lead them and their anger or their thoughts or whatever to a place that we will all then agree in. So maybe your solution was not the best and they hated it, but
Mhm.
their proposed solution is not also the best. But then at that call, we find a common ground for everybody that's also great for users, and we settle on it and we are good. So, I've had cases where this thing happened to me with a client call. The client came to apologize, like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I was shouting. I had an issue with my wife." I'm like,
Ah. Oh my
because I
god.
was really upset. I was so mad. But I'm like, I can't be fighting with this guy on the call. There are other stakeholders here. It's not a good look for me and my team. So I was very calm. And I'm like, "Oh, how are you so calm?" Like in real life, I'm not really calm, but this is a work setting. So we need to be very professional and everything else. So yeah. Maybe the person might not be going through life. You don't know. Just calm down. It's not that deep.
True. True. I mean, I've also seen. I think I know in your work setting, I really don't condone shouting, but even in like real life, it's
Hmm.
it shuts down my brain automatically. Like whatever you're saying is never going to enter. But I also feel like in the space of shouting at a person in your workspace in your work setting, um,
Hmm.
one thing I always like, especially when you are a team lead or a senior person, it doesn't really speak well of how your subordinates would see you later on.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I always tell people to like, as much as you are upset or vexed with what people on your team are not doing well, just just calm. Just calm. I think for me, I first used to laugh it out because I can't believe this. So I first laugh it out, and I think then it's easier to now speak like I'll first try to like I first I learned to take this approach of I'll ask the person like, look at this thing you've done, are you happy? That's the first thing. Like look at,
And
if
then
you
we
not
all
tell
talk
me
about
you are
it.
happy, that's when I'll now
Yeah.
know that okay. Okay, this is bigger than I thought. All right. Okay. So are there any like design rules that you break to how will I explain this now? Are there rules in design that you break because you feel like this show doesn't really make so much sense, but I think the approach I'm taking, which is against the rule, makes better sense.
Better. On a UX level, I'm not going to lie, I've done it a couple times. There's this thing in user experience called unethical design. Basically, in general terms, it just means you are doing something out of deception. So let me just confess on this, 'cause I've done it before. But what happened was they're trying to like get more leads. Well, in my defense, I was forced to do it. Like it's not like I did it in my design, but I was aware
Mm-hmm.
that they're going to implement it with that. So basically, you know how you're signing up and then you see those checkboxes that say, "I agree to sign up to this newsletter."
Mm-hmm.
they flipped it. So when that thing is checked, you assume that you are signed, you are agreeing to sign in. So people are now like smart and like uncheck it so that I don't want to do your newsletter. But they flip the text to now be I do not agree to, or I don't comply or something. I don't want to get to your newsletters. When the box is empty, it means you will not get it. So it means you will get it if the box is empty.
But if you
But if it's checked, it means that I'm checking that I do not want to get your newsletters. So I was away and we launched it. And I think, I mean, in that moment it was good. Like, oh, we are having 10,000 people in newsletters, but
was against their will.
because they didn't consent to it,
Oh
we
my
ended up going
god.
long time. It was a bad idea. We ended up people were not reading our messages, people were unsubscribing because you know how if you get a Gmail that you don't open or people have reported as like spam, Google will send it to your promotions or your
Mm.
socials. So we were never seeing it. And in the beginning, oh my god, we have 10,000 subscribers today. But in like a very near future, we realized that it was not even making sense for business because they didn't consent to that and it was just deception on
Exactly.
that.
You're forcing your user down their throat. They're not interested. That's crazy.
So
That's
that in I was forced. The owners of the product insisted they wanted to do this. So while it was not my entire will or my intention, I was aware of this when the product went live. That's on a UX level. On a UI level, there's something called an 8 point grid system, which is used to do clean designs. Basically, just means that everything you do in your design is in multiples of eights. And then I think people realize that it doesn't really work. So they reduce it to a 4 point system. I mean, they didn't reduce it, but like we now realize that a better way to go
that
about to be
won't
a
work
4 point.
better. Mhm.
That also doesn't work. Because sometimes I want to give spacing between the heading and the subtext. 4 is too small, but 8 is too much. So I want to use 6. And this differs from like typeface to typeface or component to component because sometimes it works. And sometimes when you use like when you use bigger font sizes or smaller when you use smaller font sizes, the spacing, the character spacing on the font is designed a type of way. The one, for example, the one for Inter might not be the one for Helvetica. The fonts are different. So sometimes those rules don't apply to
Mhm.
every case. So I have done it sometimes where I know that I'm supposed to use a 4 point system on this design, and I have used that up until this use case because this one I'm doing now does not work. 4 points is too small and 8 is too wide. So I use 6. I'm very guilty of that. I've done it like almost every time. So I'm very guilty of that. In case you are Debbie are looking at me now, I'm sorry. But you said yeah. That one I break that a lot.
Okay. I mean, it's allowed because there's a reason why you're doing that. So I'll say it's allowed. But that first one's very diabolical. But well, allowed the second one. Well, allowed the second one. Okay, so my final question is kind of like a question to reflect, right? So I started doing
Okay.
yoga like a month ago, so I say reflect a lot, and you know. Okay. So, what piece of advice would you give your younger self about taking the path in design? Like, if you could just reflect back to the first day you open your laptop to start designing, what advice would you give that Alison about your future, like, or your pathway that you're on right now?
It won't be worth it in the end. All of your I think my greatest fear at that time was that I'll put in so much effort and it will just be useless.
Mm.
But everything I've done, even the days I showed up 1%, I showed up 90%, they've all led me up to this moment. So my advice would just be that everything. If Alison knew that that would be worth it, she would have done more. So my advice would be, it will all be worth it. Like there's no effort you put in that will be wasted. That has been wasted. So in fact, do more if you can. But yeah, don't be sad that it doesn't look great right now. Especially if you're in 2020, it will be worth it. It will be worth it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Alison.
No.
I mean, I've seen your work over the years and how much great work you've done.
Thank you.
And I'm very proud of your work. I'm very proud of everything you've been doing. Like I like telling people, oh, Alison, I know her. I worked with her before. I worked with her before. So yeah, so proud of what you're doing. Thank you so much for coming on this episode and talking about. I really wanted people to like with this design episode. I really wanted to hear from. I really wanted you to be the one to handle this one because I've personally seen your growth over the years. So I know that you'll be able to give a very good perspective of design and everything. And I really hope that everybody that listens to this episode hears and understands, and designers can actually be better, especially the ones that are aspiring. I get a lot of, I want to come to tech, no code, I'm looking at design, I'm looking at products. And I feel like most people don't really know what they're getting themselves into. They just see, oh, this person did this, I think I can do this too. And then they come into the space and see that it's not about putting block and block.
It's very hard.
Yeah. But thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for joining this episode. I
Thank
really appreciate your
you.
time. Thank you for being here, and bye bye.
Bye.